All right, so now let's set up proper register user, where in the callback function, we want to change the URL. So instead of testing register, we're going to go with the register. And then since we'll also set up the extra reducers, we want to return if we're successful. So remember, async returns a promise. We'll handle that promise in extra reducers in the pending, fulfilled, as well as, I believe it was rejected. Yep. So in this case, if we're successful, we return response.data, where the user object is going to be sitting. And if there is an error, we have thunk API, and we'll go with thunk API dot reject with value. And what value are we returning? Well, if there is an error, the error message is going to be located in the message property, in the error dot response dot data. And then in the extra reducers in the slice, we'll set up one for pending, one for fulfilled, as well as rejected. While we're pending, we'll just set is loading to true. And we'll also attach that is loading finally to our button, to the submit button. If we are successful, then we'll grab the payload. And this is the case where I'll write away the structure. Remember, the parameter there is the action, and then in the action, we have the payload, and then in the payload, we'll have the user, just like we covered in the Redux Toolkit tutorial. So grab the user from the payload. We'll set is loading to false. Basically, we're done loading. We'll set the state user equal to user, and we'll use our toast. We'll say, okay, we're successful, hello there, and then whatever is the name. Now, how do I know that there's going to be a name property? Because I set up the API. So I know that that property exists there. And obviously somewhere we'll also console log just so you can see that as well. And if there is an error, again, I write away the structure of the payload. I'll set is loading equal to false, and I'll use toast error and pass in the payload. And then at the very end, I want to disable the submit button if we're loading. And you know what? Since I'll probably forget to do that, let me do that right now. Where I want to go to register, where it is. It's over here. So we're grabbing the value, the is loading, from our store, correct? As well as the user. And don't worry, user we'll use a little bit later. And now I want to navigate to submit. And effectively, I want to add disabled prop here. And I want to set it equal to is loading. So while we're loading, the user won't be able to submit the form. Now, once we're done, of course, then the user again can submit. So I'm just checking for the state value. If it's true, then the button, the submit button, is going to be disabled. So let's try to set up the user slice. Now, I'm not going to leave this for your reference because you have README. So let's set up proper request. We have try and catch. What is going to be the URL? Well, it's going to be a register. Then we still pass in the user, so that stays the same. I think I'm going to log it in extra reducers. And then let's just go here with const, or I'm sorry, let's just return response and then data. So that's where the user object is going to be located. We're not going to use toast in here, but we do want to use the thunk API and reject with a value. So let's go here with return, then thunk API, reject with value, and then let's go with error dot, and we're looking for response, data, and then the message. So that's what we are returning. Then let's go to our create slice, and we're going to set up extra reducers. And we want to start here with a name. So in my case, it is a register user, and we want to go with pending. Now this will be equal to our function. We can access the state here. And then let's say state is loading. It's going to be equal to true. So while the request is taking place, the loading is going to be set to true. Again, we'll disable the button. Then we also want to set up two more. We want to go here with fulfilled. So that is if we're successful, and also one for rejected. Like I said, in this case, I will write away the structure. Since in the tutorial I covered that there is an action, it is an object, And in there we have the payload. Now, what is going to be in a payload? This, whatever we're returning, whatever we have there in the data object. Now, what I'm mostly interested is that user. So right away say const user is equal to payload. Then I'll set up the is loading equal to false. And let's also set up the user. So let's say state dot user is equal to my user. So whatever I'm getting back, it's going to be I wouldn't say giant object, but it's going to be an object. And then also let's invoke that toast. Let's say toast success. And let's set up template strings here just because we're going to use the interpolation. I'll say hello there. And then let's access the user object. And in there, it's going to be a name property. Now, if there's some kind of error, I'll simply set up is loading equal to false. And then I'll use the toast error and I'll just simply grab the payload. So let me go here in the structure. I'll say payload. So now let's try this out. And I know that you're probably sick of hearing this, but remember with register, we can only register with unique email, which means that if you'll try to register with the same email twice, you will get back the error. And again, that was the reason why we first set up everything with the testing. So let's try this one out. Now, of course, I cannot use John because I already set it up initially while I was building the application. So let me try to think of the email that doesn't exist. First, I'll still pass in the John. I'll say here John, and then let's go with one. You know what? Let me try one. Maybe that works. Let's go here with Gmail, and then let's set up some kind of password. And check it out. Now I have email already in use. So everything was correct. We did set up a request. However, email is already in use. Okay. Let's try one more time. Let's go with John12 or whatever value you're passing. And what do you know? Now I have hello there, John. And if I take a look at the Redux DevTools, all the way in here, I have register user fulfilled. And what do you know? I have the user object. I have this pretty big object. And in here, I have all the values. So I have email, last name, location, as well as the token. And this is the important one. This is the one that we'll use in a later request to get that restricted data, to get the data that is associated only with John12 email or whatever. And again, if I'll try to submit this one more time, check it out. Now I'll have email already in use. So hopefully this is clear. This is how we can set up proper register function. So now we registered the user. Now don't worry, just because we tried one more time doesn't change anything. Basically, we have registered the user. So in a following video, we can set up the login functionality. So once we create the user, let's try to log in with whatever value you set up. In my case, that is john12@gmail.com.